It's football and other F words, and I'm just the idiot in the middle with the glasses on in this menage a trois of Titans talk. My name is Zach Lyons. You can follow me on Twitter at the Zach Lyons. You can follow Mike at Mike Herndon NFL. He's on time, sort of, but all of the technology is working, so we can only gotta take what we can get. And then, of course, we got Stoney Keeley, who's looking mighty festive for this Halloween. And
Tis the season.
Stoney here is, you can follow him on Twitter at Stoney Keeley. You guys have both written totally different articles. One of Mike over at PK.com saying that the season's over and the coach needs to be fired. And Stoney over at StackingInbox.com saying that nothing is wrong and everything is all rainbow and daisies. And so you can go read those diametrically opposed articles over at those particular websites. And, of course, you can listen to me on Cover 2 with Blaine Bishop, Zach Lyons, Monday through Fridays, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. And Titans Talk Back with me, Kevin Dyson, not Derek Mason, unlike what Vic Gilmore on the YouTube comment channel for the latest Titans Talk Back thought, because he obviously does not know his Titans legends. And then Brent Doherty and Lucas Panzica when they're on as well. So those are Sundays right after the post-game presser, so you get the fresh reaction, the emotional scars opened every Sunday anew. The wounds are always there over on Titans Talkback. And I guess, where do we start? I mean, do we really want to talk about the Detroit Lions game? I put it like this, and Mike, I'll start with you and get your thoughts. If you would have time traveled, if you would have told me you were a time traveler, Mike, and you came to me Sunday morning and said, Zach, the Tennessee Titans lose 52-14, I would have said, totally believe it. There's not a doubt in my mind that this team was going to lose. If you tell me, then follow that up with, but it's with Jared Goff only throwing 85 yards, I would have said, you're a freaking lunatic. Go back to the future, because you guys are obviously idiocracy up there. You guys are idiots. That is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Unfortunately, that is what happened. Players decided to just make the stupidest decisions I've seen. It is wild. Some of the effort you saw, it is wild. Some of the angles that were taken. It was just an utter disaster. I'm not surprised that the Tennessee Titans lost, but I am surprised in the way that they lost. And I put it like this, because I'm not afraid to say it. I go see a therapist, and I told my therapist on Tuesday I was having a really hard time that morning figuring out how to talk about the team. She goes, "What do you mean?" So, well, they suck, and we have to figure out new ways to talk about how bad they suck. Like, I'm trying to figure out different ways, because they are finding new ways to lose, but it's not providing us different talking points. But, Mike, your initial reaction after the game, if you even watched the whole game?
I actually did check out. I don't think I watched the last drive or two. It was painful. Look, I mean, I fully expected, like you said, the Titans to lose this game and lose it badly. I did not expect the Calvin Ridley to have more first quarter catches than he had first quarter targets up into that point in the season. Thank you for listening, Brian Callahan, to the pleas of people who said, "Hey, get your star receiver involved early, might help him out."
And also thanks to Mason Rudolph for actually throwing to the wide receiver on 100%.
But it was just a bizarre game. It was a weird game, but it's just one of those things where it's like, if you had any doubt about what a pro championship level football team looked like compared to the Titans right now, I gave it to you as clear as day. The Lions are a true contender. I had them in the Super Bowl before the season. I think they're going to be in the Super Bowl because I think they're very clearly the best team in the NFC. I don't know that it's even close. And that is how far the Titans are away from that. So pretty clear picture of that. Special teams, complete disaster. It didn't take long
for the Lions to get there, though. So, I mean, there is at least a little bit of good news.
Yeah, it did take a while for them to get there. And they've built the right way. Like they've really done a nice job building. Like they found Jared Goff, but the way they got Jared Goff is, I don't know that that's a repeatable, thing where you're going to have like an aging, very good quarterback that someone wants to trade like what they got 2 firsts.
Well, you also don't have a quarterback to trade in return, right? Like,
yeah. Right. But for Stafford, they got 2 firsts plus Goff, right? That has to go down as like one of the best trades in NFL history. Now, look, the Rams did win a Super Bowl, so they're not, feeling terrible about it either. But the Lions getting Goff, who was kind of like almost a throw-in in that deal, and getting him back to where he was early in his Rams career, it's been super impressive. And it goes to show you what you can do when you surround a guy who has legitimate talent. Goff is legitimately talented as a quarterback with the right supporting cast, the right offensive line. I mean, that offensive line is a brick wall around him. They run the ball well, as we saw on Sunday. And then, he's got good enough weapons that even without Jameson Williams, he's got plenty of guys to spread the ball around too. So, very, very good team, very well built team, different class of NFL team from the Titans. But like the turnovers in the special teams are the story of the game. I mean, clearly you cannot give that team short fields and expect to even remain in contention. And they did that consistently. Look, the special teams are an unmitigated disaster. It is one of the worst special teams units I've ever seen. Not just from the Titans, from any team. I can't remember another team that had 2 blocked punts returned for touchdowns. I mean, they're second in the NFL in average kickoff return yards allowed. They're first in the NFL in average punt return yards allowed. They've most punts blocked out of any team in the NFL. The only thing going right for the special teams unit right now is Nick Folk did not ever miss kicks, which is awesome. Great job, Nick.
Well, hey, the punt blocking is better.
Well, they're not getting punts blocked anymore. Yeah.
They did that. This is the issue here, is that Mike Vrabel overvalued special teams, with filling in his back into the roster, and this regime just decided to take a shit all over special teams and not do anything with it. Like, they just got rid of every core special team player that was on the roster in the previous couple of years that was available to them. They cut. It was ridiculous. And it's something that we talked about, was like, man, I don't know if they should have cut Hassan Haskins. You probably could have kept both. But boy, they sure did have to keep your guy, Caleb Murphy, and David Martin Robinson for a long time. That really is helping them.
By the way, they should be playing David Martin Robinson here soon. Like, let's get the guy some snaps. And I wrote about it. This is part of what I wrote about this week. It's time. You start playing some of these young guys. Get them in the rotation. It doesn't mean you have to give David Martin Robinson all of Chig's snaps, but can we get him in there for 10 to 15? And
Josh
see
Wiley
what he's got.
snaps.
I mean, Josh Wiley had a good game. Josh Wiley has been fine. He and Chig have both been equally levels
the
of
guy
meh.
to the quarterback last week.
Well, I mean, look, like there have been equal levels of meh. Nobody's putting either guy in the Hall of Fame, but let's get some of these young guys some snaps, I think is the point, and figure out what they've got. Because, and this goes for Cedric Gray, I don't care if he's better than Jerome Baker. He needs to see the field. And we need to find out answers on, is Cedric Gray a starter next year? Is he a backup? Is he on the roster? Can we figure that out over the next 10 games, please, so we don't have to guess going into this offseason, what he is and isn't? So this is the time now for the rest of the season. Figure it out. Figure out what you got on all these young guys, these pieces that could be parts, like Gabe Judy-Lally. I mean, let's play him a little bit. Get him some snaps in there. I mean, all of the young guys, play them all.
Stoney, where do you land on your thoughts after the game? Like, your immediate thoughts versus maybe how you feel 48 hours removed from the game. Now it's 72, but.
Well, first of all, I want to say I tend to agree with Mike. Like, let's get some player evals in here, but there's a wrinkle that complicates this. In a 52-14 loss, Brian Callahan might have to start actually winning some games just to buy himself a little bit of time so that he's not pushed out of here, shown the exit by an impatient ownership group. But I think, to me, I wasn't surprised by this outcome at all. I think if you looked at the matchups, you checked just about everything in favor of the Detroit Lions in this one. I do think this is the best team in the entire NFL right now. And my cat's about to push over my lighting rig. So if you just see an explosion on my end, my apologies. But anyway, I think this was an overwhelming matchup for where this Tennessee Titans team is right now. I actually had an alternate spread bet on this game, Lions by 37.5. They won by 38, so I cashed my bet. I won $21 on a $1 bet, so that was a nice little payday for me. I wasn't surprised by it. I was actually more surprised that they kept it competitive for so long at 14-14, moving the ball on offense. They looked more efficient than they had all season on offense, but man, hats off to Ben Johnson. He knew exactly how to attack this defense in the red zone. I didn't think Kenneth Murray had a particularly good game. When you look back at Jahmyr Gibbs' long touchdown run, I think there are several places you can point the blame to. Tavondre Sweat kind of gets sealed off. Jalen Harrell does a good job of setting the edge, but once the ball's handed off, he doesn't work back in to close up that gap. And then Kenneth Murray looks a little hesitant, doesn't get to the gap quick enough. And the result is an opening that Jahmyr Gibbs gets to the second level and he just outruns everybody. So there's not a lot of speed. They approach this game as if they knew, if we can get to the second level with our speed, we can outmatch this Titans defense. On the Amon-Ra St. Brown touchdown, Darrell Baker and Kenneth Murray bought incredibly hard on the play action. So hard that Kenneth Murray is still chasing the running back down as Jared Goff is throwing the ball over him and into the end zone. It's wild, man. And it's got to be so frustrating for this defense to play like 3 good downs in a row and then just give up a 70-yard touchdown on the 4th play, that sort of thing. It's got to be frustrating, but I still think that the flashes were there in the first half of that game, that this could be a competitive team if things are firing on all cylinders. But man, it's just like Jared Goff, the ball coming out quickly. The way that teams are playing this defensive line right now, I think could be a potential problem for Denard Wilson's squad, because this is not the first team that I've noticed doing this, but they tend to give up gaps to Sweat or Simmons in one-on-one situations in a way that looks like they're baiting them. Like, here's your gap, come rush the quarterback, knowing how aggressive they are, knowing that the pass rush for this defense is going to come up the middle because they're not really afraid of what's out on the edges right now. They know, like, if we can get these guys, we can open up run lanes up the middle. And what they're doing is taking advantage of that aggression and letting guys jump into gaps. And then they're just flipping their hips, getting their hands up and sealing off a run lane behind them. And the Lions played, or Ben Johnson coached this game like he knew, hey, we're going to get some big runs up the middle. And then if we get the ball in space, they can't run our guys down. It's just a complete and utter mismatch. Good game plan, good plays from Jared Goff. Thought he was great in the red zone, staring at the safety, holding his vision there until an out-breaking route to Sam Laporta broke, and then turning and throwing the ball there. Just really good stuff. Ball coming out quickly. I think it's an overwhelming game that there's no way I would have picked the Titans to win this, but to see the collapse on special teams was the surprising aspect of it.
Stoney, were you surprised that Colt Anderson was not fired so far this week? I mean, obviously, if he's made it this far, he's not getting fired, but this week at least.
I deep down was not, because I kind of felt like this regime has talked about patience all year long. And I kind of felt like, unless there was pressure from ownership, that this was going to be a situation that you kind of ride things out and take your lumps for as long as you can. And ultimately, Brian Callahan talked about Colt Anderson, his background on special teams, an emerging young coach, like, can grow into the position. That's the optimist view of it. And I think he did a good job of articulating the issues that are plaguing special teams and how they can fix them. And it doesn't sound like it's a coaching issue. So I saw the backlash on social media and I kind of thought like, oh shit, this is bad enough. He might go. But then ultimately patience, cooler heads prevailed. And I wasn't too surprised by it in the end.
It was interesting that PK talked about today, basically that Anthony Levine, the general feeling between this regime and last regime is that this guy's just still not ready. So that was another layer. My feelings was like, it's just going to make you feel better kind of move. I don't think it's going to fix anything kind of move. Now, does that mean that he stays, at season's end? I don't know. But Mike, it sounds like in the locker room, Mike Brown is pretty blunt about it. The coaches have been blunt for the last few weeks, just about execution in general. Players have also talked about the execution being poor. And Mike Brown said, we're being coached everything. We're just not doing it on the field. And when you look at the all-22 and look at the plays, you see players getting, especially Otis Reese. I mean, he made me so mad on one play. I can't even describe as like a skeleton dancing at some point. And like, he looked like I don't know what happened. Like someone possessed him middle of the thing. And then he just started moving like this. And then like, he doesn't go anywhere. Like, I don't know what he's doing. But Brett Kern has talked about it too, about the lack of execution on special teams on this past weekend. This is Stonehouse aside. The coverage units, man, they just were pitiful. There was the 64-yard punt return. 6 guys are like right there that could have made the stop, and none of them did. And there's one guy that went like right into the end zone on one of the punt returns. I'm like, where's that guy even going? Like, terrible execution. I just couldn't believe it. But Mike, were you surprised that Colt Anderson was not fired? Because I know that you have been an advocate for a while firing Colt, I guess, since he's been hired.
Not since he's been hired. I mean, I wasn't, blown away by the hire. But I mean, because he had, no background really, besides being an assistant.
Which ironically enough is how most special teams coaches go through. They start out at assistants. They don't. They don't just form out of the heavens.
Well, just like I'm not going to be super quick to judge a quarterback's coach who gets hired as an offensive coordinator because he has no experience as an offensive coordinator. I'm not, going to jump off on a Colt Anderson thing the moment he's hired because what am I going to judge him off of? How the Bengals special teams did, under a different coach who he was on staff with. I mean, that's the closest thing you get, but we know that that's not really, it doesn't necessarily correlate one-to-one with an assistant level guy. It'd be like an assistant defensive line coach for the, 49ers getting credit for all of Nick Bosa's sacks or something like that. But my overall take on Colt Anderson is listen, I am surprised he was not fired just because this has been a complete disaster. I mean, like disaster every week. And we can sit here and say the players. I don't think the Titans are uniquely bad as far as like every single team in the NFL, bottom of the roster. I think the Titans are towards the bottom. I don't know that they're so far below the Patriots or the Jaguars or any of these other crap teams that are lingering down here in the cellar who have no depth also like the Titans don't. Now maybe they could have prioritized that, but are we saying Hassan Haskins would have fixed all this? That we'd be having no issues whatsoever if they just kept Hassan Haskins. He would have Superman this thing.
You needed a couple of people because obviously Jack Gibbons sucks.
Julius but most Chestnut, of these guys were here last year and were on special teams last year, and the special teams weren't good, but they weren't a disaster. They were not giving up 256 punt return yards in a game like they did this week, or getting multiple punts blocked. Well, they did get multiple punts blocked last year, but they weren't nearly as bad as they are this year. They were not 32nd in DVOA by like a full range of magnitude below the 31st team. Like they are uniquely bad. And at some point it does come back to the coaching because it is his job to communicate what these guys' assignments are and to coach execution and teach them how he wants it to be done. And if they're not picking it
Mike
up,
Brown said he is.
Okay. Well, Mike Brown isn't throwing his coach under the bus. Great.
We haven't seen that
player
before,
has
though.
ever.
I mean, usually what happens in that
How
instance, they
often
either
do
throw him
players
off.
say, "No, Colt Anderson sucks"? Yeah,
No,
he's my
now
special
you're
teams
just like trying to
coordinator.
take it to an extreme to make
I
the
have
point.
I have
and
no
all that
idea
stuff.
what
But
I'm
what I'm
supposed to
trying to
do on
say
punt
is that
coverage.
we saw Delaney Walker and Rashad Matthews talk bad about the offensive coordinator. We've seen players talk bad about coaches.
Well, if we're going to
while
take
they're
Mike
employed.
Brown's quote as a complete, well, no, Colt Anderson can't be wrong because Mike Brown said he knew what he was supposed to do, and they're just not doing it. Look, it's 11 guys on a punt.
I would also watch the tape if I were you, because
I do watch
it
the
was
tape.
bad.
I do watch the tape.
So
Thank
you think Colt Anderson told those 6 people
when you've got
that couldn't tackle them, hey,
players,
don't tackle if you get down there.
When you've got multiple players on the same unit who are not playing together, who are not executing what they are supposed to be doing,
just like
it comes back to coaching. You're either coaching it or you're allowing it. One of the two things.
People
that is ultimately what it comes down to. Otherwise, coaches don't matter. It's just, well, they told them what to do. It's up to the players. It's only about the players for everybody then. Because I just don't want to hear it when we bitched about Ackerman for years and years and years about, oh, these special teams suck. They suck. It's Ackerman's fault. He's terrible. And now we've got Colt Anderson, and now the special teams suck, and all of a sudden it's just the player's fault. We can't blame the coach.
But it is on the here. I'm not saying it's just the player's fault, because obviously coaches are, like you said, are involved in the game planning and all this stuff. I mean, obviously the coaches have swapped out their slow gunners for blockers because Jack Gibbons couldn't block, because he couldn't do it. I mean, we literally saw him get carried like a spider monkey through the thing. He just literally could not do it. So they had to swap out their slow gunners. They've been trying. We've seen 2 regimes try to teach Ryan Stonehouse to be a directional punter, to try to get some hang time under these punts, and he hasn't been able to do it. That may be a player execution problem, I would say.
I do think Stonehouse has some issues. I do think he's somewhat culpable as well. But he can't, again, he's not to blame for the kickoff unit being second to last in the NFL in kickoff coverage. It's the fact that it's every single unit besides Nick Folk, who's a 38-year-old kicker, that he makes his field goals. That's the only thing they do at anything above a 31st in the league level on special teams right now. That's it. That's all that they do, anything above 31st. And to me, at some point, it comes back to coaching. And I just don't, look, Colt Anderson, maybe he's a great guy. Maybe he is like God's gift to special teams coaching, and these guys have decided to have a mutiny against him because so many of these guys were here last year. And again, like, the special teams weren't great, but they were not this bad. So I just, to me, at some point it comes down to, you're either coaching it or you're allowing it, and he is not. His unit is not performing up to. I think
they could be allowing it, but I don't see what they don't have another opportunity now. Like, I mean, I don't see, unless they're going to do a mass cutting and a gutting of some of these players, because some of these players are just
they
really
can't
bad.
afford
Like,
to cut
Mike Brown.
Go. I
mean, maybe Cedric Gray. There's your chance. Cedric Gray goes in on special teams now because he's healthy. Like, maybe that is going to be one guy that's added. Maybe they start playing some more of the starters like they had. To me, it's just like these guys that they have, I mean, are either slow as molasses or dumb. One or the other.
Again, like, I just don't. I can't get there with the fact that, whoever else you want to throw in there, the Panthers. Okay, the Panthers. They don't have these issues. They're not good, but they don't have this level of issue covering punts. Are we saying that all their gunners are awesome and so much better than
I don't know. I'd have to go look at their gunners. I just know that these gunners are not awesome. They're slow. But they've had to take out the slow guys because of other roster issues. Like, it's a complete mess in the back end of that roster because of also other injuries, right? I mean, L'Jarius Sneed, Cheeto go down. Now they're afraid to put Jarvis Brownlee Jr. out as a gunner. They trade DeAndre Hopkins. Traylon Burks is also injured. NWI is gone from gunner. And then you had to take out some of the faster guys in coverage because you had to put in 3 tight ends to block for Ryan Stonehouse because Jack Gibbons and Julius Chestnut couldn't be trusted to do it. They messed up twice. Well, I would say Jack Gibbons messed up twice. Julius Chestnut messed up once. So it's like a constant rotation of trying to figure out what is going on with special teamers that can't do it. Now, listen, Blaine says they should just been patient and let all the players just stick. Let Jack Gibbons just stay out there and, don't put in 3 tight ends and maybe it all gets fixed. But I'm like, well, you can't get your punter killed. Like, Jack Gibbons is getting your punter killed now 2 out of the 3 blocks. Like, it's a bad situation. And to me, it comes down to Rand Carthon and Brian Callahan more than Colt Anderson, because it's like they just didn't care about special teams. That's ultimately where I land. I think I'm not saying that Colt Anderson is the greatest special teams coach or whatever. If he got fired, whatever. He gets fired. It's special teams coach.
I think
the other
it's
guy's not, but the other
impossible.
guy's not going to be good anyway. That's the problem.
Here's where I'm at it. All right, maybe the player selection issue could have a part of it. I'm 100% sure Colt Anderson is not doing a good job. He may not be 100% liable, but I am 100% sure he's not doing a good job at coordinating special teams, because these players don't seem to know what to do. They're making knee-jerk reactions, like, putting in all these tight ends to block because, they got a few punts blocked and everything. Those are choices that he's making.
So Denard Wilson's not doing a good job either.
Well, he didn't do a good job this past game, or the game before that, really, either. But I think ultimately, Colt Anderson's not doing a good job. I'm not sure many people on this coaching staff are frankly doing a good job right now, because this team looks unprepared to me. That's where I come down on it. This team looks like a mess every game. And at some point, yes, I get it. You've got a young team. You've got some inexperienced guys. You got some new guys in the system, all that stuff. But Washington has that issue. And what are they doing? Like, they're leading, I think, the NFC in scoring this year. And I get it. Like, they got Jaden Daniels. Titans don't. No, I get that.
Not
but
even close.
A rookie quarterback still, though. You're throwing in a rookie quarterback and you're leading the NFC in scoring with an offensive line that was completely remade, wide receivers core who had Terry McLaurin, and then a bunch of guys that, you really don't know anything about for the most part. De'Ami Brown and all these other guys. I mean, it's not like they took over the all-world, roster over there in Washington, but they are getting it done from a coaching standpoint, because I think Cliff Kingsbury is doing a hell of a job coaching the Commanders' offense. So I just feel like there's a lot of excuses we can make. I don't feel like this team looks prepared week to week, and I think it comes back to the coaching staff. I'm not saying I'm out on Callahan. I'm just saying it needs to start to show improvement before the end of the season, where I do think he's going to be in danger of being one of these guys that only gets 1 year, because it has been that bad so far. It's been a mess.
Well, it'll be good to have a dysfunctional franchise and start all over yet again for no reason whatsoever. Stoney, are you for the dysfunctional franchise that Mike is trying to push on everybody? Where do you land on the execution versus coaching debate?
Run that question back for me. You broke up a little bit on me.
Where do you land on the execution versus coaching debate?
Well, I don't necessarily feel like guys look unprepared as a whole, as a collective. I feel like it's like one dude on every play, where like eight or nine guys are going to do their job, and then the last 2 are going to run into each other type of shit. And I do think that there's enough on the tape to say, hey man, like this stuff is going to work if they start connecting on some of these plays. What I really need to know is, if we're going to dedicate 20 minutes to special teams every week, I'm going to need you guys to give me a heads up, because I just skip those plays when I'm watching the all 22s, because I don't give a fuck about special teams. So y'all going to have to let me know by next Wednesday if I need to be watching these plays in more detail.
Well, you need to be at least watching the ones that they messed up on, I guess. But I just, to me, I look at it and I go, I'm with you. I see the vision, and I'm kind of like you. I really don't care about special teams. Now, I will call out how I see it and how I've seen those plays. It's incredible to me that Colt Anderson gets blamed for Jack Gibbons getting carried like a little baby, little man-child, getting breastfed by his by someone, and then he just decides to play patty cake with Calais Campbell on a near block punt, and Julius Chestnut just looks like a freaking idiot out there. in doing his thing where he's just like, oh, I guess I'll just go let this guy go around me. So it's called football instincts. Like, and Nick Vannett said it. Some of these players lack football instincts, and you can laugh all you want, and people can do all this, but like when you have 6 guys surround Khalif Raymond, not one of them tackles, it's like 2 players, baseball players, trying to catch a pop fly, and they think the other one's got it. That's what it looked like. Like, it makes no sense. Football instincts, go knock the crap out of someone, and these guys are lacking some football instincts for whatever reason. Nick Vannett said it. We lack instinct. The players are just literally pouring their hearts out. Because normally what you hear from a player is like, I don't know what's happening. Or, man, you'd have to ask the coach. I don't know. Like, that's normally what you get. But we're getting pretty blunt answers because this has been like, I guess they're just fostering honesty. Whether that's good or bad, who knows? But they are fostering honesty out in these things. And you guys could choose to ignore it if you want. But, like, there are different ways to answer questions other than just putting the blame pretty squarely on the shoulder. Like, he could say, hey, we got to play better and, and all this stuff. But he said, we're being taught what to do. We're just not going out there and executing. Is a pretty damning thing to say. And maybe that does fall back on the coaching to maybe not threaten them enough. And maybe they do need to have a more heavy hand situation, because it goes back to your point, and I agreed with it, Mike, is like you're either you're allowing it to happen at that point. But there's only so many players you can get off practice squads and all this stuff. But surely there's got to be someone out there that can play special teams better than these hooligans they got out here, looking like goobers constantly. And I just kind of view it as like, maybe this is the more laxed environment that everybody kind of was worried that this would foster. But I will say this. You watch Brian Callahan's press conference after that loss, directly after that loss, that man was pissed off. Rage in his eyes. It wasn't the dejected, kind of like, man, we were so close. He had like this crazy rage, and at least we're seeing a little bit of that. And I would imagine there is a little bit more cussing and yelling and scolding going on.
Hope he hit someone
Monday afternoon than previous things. New England Patriots come to town. Stoney, I'm just gonna let you, Stoney, preview it because I want to get to the quarterback discussion as far as like what's going on with Anthony Richardson and all that kind of stuff. So I'm just gonna let you preview the Patriots game.
I think this is a game that would really, really help out Brian Callahan and these coaches if they went in there and won it. If this team drops to 1-7 at the hands of the New England Patriots, I think then we might have to be on red alert for some heat coming down on this coaching staff, because this is a team I saw that comment. I love it. I thought you were about to say Gibby getting breastfed by a dog too, and then you corrected yourself, and I was like, whoa, where is this going for a second? But I digress. The Patriots game, I think this is an organization that is kind of reeling right now. It is sort of going off the deep end right now in its rebuild. It sounds like there's player dissent coming out of New England. Some of the players are starting to revolt against Gerard Mayo a little bit. He's in press conferences calling the team soft. It doesn't sound like a highly functional organization right now. I think 1-6 is bad. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to sugarcoat it. It's not like this team is competitive, but I do think these last 2 weeks distort the perspective of how, man, we're getting barraged here. The perception of what this team really is. I think the last 2 weeks they've gone up against two of the best teams that they'll probably face all season long. They've gotten drilled. Morale is pretty low in this fan base, but I think this is still a good enough team that should host the New England Patriots on Sunday, and they should handle them pretty easily. It's not a dynamic offense at all. Sounds like Drake May's hurt. Sounds like it's going to be Jacoby Brissett. These receivers are just total ass. I mean, I saw a tweet. I can't remember who it's from. I can't cite my sources, but somebody tweeted the New England Patriots have 3 wide receiver 3s with the mentalities of wide receiver 1s. And that is so true. Like, these guys can't make a play. They're running the ball. They still have some talent on defense, but man, this team looks, when you watch them, they look light years worse than the Titans right now. And I know it's bad, but I still think this Titans team is trending in a positive direction based on the first halves that we've seen of the last 2 weeks. So I think it's a game that if they don't win, it is going to be bad. It is going to be catastrophic, because these last 2 losses, you can at least justify like, oh, these are Super Bowl contenders and we're just not there yet. If you lose to these bum ass New England Patriots, that's when I think things are going to start heating up for this coaching staff, and they better win some games.
Mike, the Patriots are at home. Do you have any extra thoughts you want to provide on? Because I think the Titans are going to beat the Patriots, and not as handedly as like the previous 2 games where I predicted them to lose, but I do think that like I'm like 99% sure that they are going to beat the Patriots, just like I was 100% sure that they were going to get creamed by the Bills and the Detroit Lions.
I'm not nearly as confident as you guys. I think this is 50-50, because I bet you the Patriots are saying the same exact thing about the Titans. That, yeah, if Gerard Mayo wants to keep his job, then he better beat these bum ass Titans. I guarantee
anybody want to play
saying
for
the same thing. I would be if I was a Patriots fan and I saw them coming up on the schedule. And the Patriots are coming off a win over the Jets. I mean, that's the Jets aren't world beaters by any stretch, but the Titans lost to them. So I don't know. I don't think that this is a shoe-in kind of win by any means. I think it's going to be an ugly, borderline unwatchable game, most likely. The first to 16 wins kind of game. So I don't know. This is going to be an affront to modern football at Nissan Stadium on Sunday. That's my preview of this game.
I'll echo this sentiment, Mike. I don't think I'm confident that this is a shoe-in for the Titans. I wouldn't say that. I'm saying it should be, based on the way that they're playing so far. I think they're playing better than the Patriots, but I don't know how you can trust this team to actually execute at this point.
Eldon is saying Jordan Addison is now a Patriot, but I haven't seen anybody report that. And he's asking if it's real, but I don't see anybody on my list reporting it. So we'll keep you updated if that changes.
And it's true, he's going to score 2 touchdowns on Sunday against the
Titans. Okay, so Anthony Richardson gets benched. I would first like to pour one out for all the nerds who refuse to listen to players and coaches, former players and coaches, tell you that quitting on your team is a bad thing. And saying that, it's only 1 or 2 plays is not real life football. I would also like to pour out one for all the draft nerds who decided not to change their evaluation while having watched Anthony Richardson, and also making excuses for Anthony Richardson, blaming the scheme, blaming the wide receivers, and not blaming the guy that only had 14 starts in college. All that said, I did think Anthony Richardson was going to be good. I have not agreed with the Colts game plan for this, the entire situation, but I did think Anthony Richardson would be good. But if history is to hold true, it is over for Anthony Richardson. Now, Mike, you put out a really, really long tweet talking about all the ins and outs, because not every rookie quarterback situation is the same. And not every team has the luxury or anything like that of holding out hope for a player when they don't show enough of development. And it's a real interesting discussion, because we could take it so many different ways, but I don't view it as a development issue. I view it as a quarterback evaluation / desperation issue, because I feel like with the way that the quarterback market has gone, I feel like teams are trying to chase the ghost of Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes, which are complete outliers, by the way, when you really dissect it. But I think like everybody's so desperate to find the guy that they're forcing guys up draft boards that shouldn't be on. Like when I'm going through the list, and I went from 2008 to now of quarterbacks drafted, I forget that Christian Ponder is even a person. Like, think about that. We all knew that Christian Ponder sucked going in, and you wouldn't draft him, but the Minnesota Vikings still spin a first because that's what that's what teams feel like they have to do.
He was the Kenny Pickett of the aughts.
Yeah, yeah. So I ask you, Mike, do you think that this recent trend of bad quarterback classes for the most part, where players are getting pushed up boards, do you think that trend's going to kind of start stalling out, especially with this quarterback class on the horizon, where you really probably only have 2 worthy first-round quarterbacks on tape, while everybody else is kind of the outliers? Or do you think that they're still going to be quarterback happy in the first round?
It's an interesting question just because I think teams are still going to be quarterback desperate, because if you don't have a quarterback, that is your franchise's obsession until you do have one, right? Like that is the thing that lingers over every discussion about every team who doesn't have a quarterback is where do they find their quarterback? And still, even though there are a ton of busts and the hit rate is super low, even in the top half of the first round, that's still where the majority of your star and starting quarterbacks come from. So if you look at the guys that I would consider probably like the 5 best going right now, you've got Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, and then I've got Josh Allen, obviously, and CJ Stroud. Those are kind of my 5 right now that are at the top. You know, at Justin.
I don't know if I put CJ Stroud up top 5, but I get what you're going.
Yeah, I mean, Jaden Daniels is kind of already starting to push up there too. Those
very
guys are
few SEC quarterbacks, by the way. That got brought up in the chat. There's not a lot of SEC quarterbacks. It's just 2 right now. I mean, you can count Texas and Oklahoma later, those quarterbacks later, but it's just really Joe Burrow and Jaden Daniels right now carrying the torch for the SEC.
Yeah, but I mean, like out of those 5, they're all, except for Lamar, top 11 picks. I think Mahomes was 11th. So that's still like where you find those elite guys. Because at some point, if you have those traits, I think teams are just gonna to make that leap, and that does get teams burned. Because I think that's why Anthony Richardson went so high. I think that's why guys like who else would be in a reason, even like Trevor Lawrence going number 1 overall and being proclaimed football Jesus. A lot of that was traits based. That he had this high upside and everything like that. And he hasn't really worked out like most people thought he would.
Like Blaine Gabbert.
But Blaine Gabbert's another one. Yeah, he had traits. And so sometimes that is going to get you burned. But sometimes it is going to hit too, right? Like there's just not a lot of guys that don't fit that mold of having a big arm, being, physically large, able to take the hits of an NFL season, staying healthy, staying on the field. To me, I think I almost am now back at the point where if I was running an NFL franchise, my rule would be basically the Bill Parcells rule of drafting quarterbacks. You need to be at least start, I think it's like 27 games during your college career. You need to have a winning percentage above 65% or 70% or whatever it was. I'd have to look up the exact rules, but he had like 8 criteria. But it basically comes down to
here we go. You ready?
Right. Yeah.
Be a 3-year starter.
Yeah.
Be a senior in college. Graduate from college. Start 30 games. Win 23 games. Post a 2-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio, and complete at least 60% of passes thrown.
And not to spoil my own work here for next week, but I think this is ultimately going to be what I write about next week is the quarterback situation. Because I'm not going to want to write about this dreadful game. But where you find quarterbacks, what is, I guess, projectable? Because I feel like the guys that are hitting for the most part are guys that played a lot in college and guys that showed that ability. in college, and you don't get a lot of the guys who, maybe were borderline college players but had huge projectable traits like an Anthony Richardson, even like Will Levis, I think falls into this category too. Major projectable traits, but didn't really show it in college to a high level. I mean, his junior season, pretty good statistically, but I think the tape wasn't probably as good as the stats were.
It was just kind of average. Like,
Yeah, I just feel like
it's average.
To me, those are the things that kind of mostly are translating from what you look at. But I still think you've got to kind of keep throwing those darts in the first round, the top half of the first round, because that's ultimately where these guys come from. The Brock Purdy's, of the world. They're good quarterbacks, but nobody's saying Brock Purdy's going to strap that team on his back and carry the franchise to 13 wins a year like Josh Allen is in Buffalo right now, and like Patrick Mahomes is obviously with the Chiefs. If you want, and Lamar Jackson too. I mean, Lamar Jackson, look at what the Ravens, how much has changed around him with the Ravens since they started this run. It's virtually like 10 new guys this year compared to what it was his MVP year back in 2019. It's him. The system is him. And if you want a guy like that, I think you got to go get him early. And I think you got to keep throwing darts, even though it's only going to be like a maybe 10% hit rate, which sucks. That's hard, and that's going to mean a lot of bad quarterbacks and a lot of busts. But you can't stop throwing darts, because the guys that are available on the trade market, the guys that are available in these reclamation things, the Goffs, the Bakers, the Genos. Now, maybe Goff can win a Super Bowl. I don't know. He's the one guy that I think may be able to kind of jump over. But those guys, I don't think are winning Super Bowls. They might get you in the playoffs consistently, but they're going to be Tannehills. They're not going to be Mahomeses or Allen. And I know Allen hasn't won a Super Bowl yet, mostly because he plays in the same conference as Patrick Mahomes. But I think there's a gap there. And I think most people would agree with that for the most part. But I think if you're going to find that guy that's in that elite franchise-changing tier, you got to go get them early still. So you're just going to have to keep swinging, and it's going to come with some misses,
I mean, Stoney, that was a lot right there, but I know that you are big on talking about the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes chasing and how that may have shifted the views of people. Anthony Richardson was obviously someone in that mold where you think he has the possibility to be Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, or Josh Allen. At worst, you think he's going to be Jalen Hurts, right? But Jalen Hurts was drafted in the second, and he had time to sit and didn't start right away and all this kind of stuff. And kind of feels like the Colts got a little high on their own supply because, all that sunshine pumping into the building from media and Stephen Holder and Zach Hicks, who's apparently used to be a Washington fan. He's not even a Colts fan, which is just so odd to me. But all those guys pumped sunshine all about Anthony Richardson in the offseason last year. And really, they probably should start with Gardner Minshew. So I got two questions for you. Talk about the chasing of Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, and how you feel that has changed the trajectory of how teams view quarterbacks, but also talk about what do you think? It's not one size fits all, but what do you think is the correct way that teams should be going about evaluating and deciding when to play their quarterbacks?
Yeah, my exact words to you earlier today were Allen and Mahomes have kind of ruined scouting for the last several years, because it was those guys that kind of came into the NFL, took the league by storm. Well, I mean, eventually they got there. I know Mahomes sat his rookie year. Allen was not particularly great as a rookie, and then got right. And then everybody started saying, oh, well, it's possible that we can ignore things like experience and production, and we can just find the next freakish athlete and we can coach him. And the state of the college game, it's like, oh, well, none of these guys are getting experience in a pro style offense anymore. They're not doing things like changing protections. They're getting their play calls from the sidelines. We're going to have to teach these guys how to basically operate an offense anyway. Let's go take a swing on the traitsy, explosive, playmaking quarterback. And I feel like there's been a lot of instances where teams are chasing that. And the Colts with Anthony Richardson is a prime example of that, where this was a guy that I thought had a ceiling as potentially the best quarterback to come out of that draft class. Then he goes to Indianapolis, where to take a quarterback whose biggest strength right away would have been his legs, and to put him on that turf in that stadium, questionable decision to begin with, I think. And now we're seeing like the injuries pop up with him. And so you think like this is a guy that you're basically starting as a lump of clay. I mean, as raw and as raw can get kind of deal. So it takes patience, but we don't see that from ownership anymore, really. I mean, there's not a lot of regimes that are going to stay in place when you're losing constantly. So it's like guys know, like they feel the pressure. We've got to get the quarterback. We've got to get it right. As soon as he's drafted, the hourglass flips, and when the sand runs out, it runs out on us all. So it's a really shitty spot to be in when you're talking about rolling the dice on a young quarterback, because they're not getting the quality of coaching in the college ranks as they would be in the NFL, but you also don't really have the time it takes to develop them. And I think that's ultimately the impact of this, is that I think really scouting should kind of go back to placing more of an emphasis on those things, like how does a guy elevate his program? How in command of the offense does he look? How efficient is he? How much experience does he have? You know, people kind of shit on the Bo Nix pick, but look at what he's doing with the Denver Broncos right now. Highly experienced guy. He's not the most explosive playmaker, but he kind of understands how to work things right there. And they've got a good coach in Sean Payton to guide him, and they're getting by, and they're in the playoff race. And personally, as an aside, I need a Broncos Steelers playoff game like I need air to breathe. That would be so disgusting to watch, and I'm here for it. But I think the ultimate impact of this trend is that we get back to a spot where we've got to value the blue chip players in the draft and not pass those over to take a traitsy quarterback like Anthony Richardson. It's not to say you can't go out on a limb and take your Jaden Daniels or your Caleb Williams or something like that, but I think we'll probably eventually see teams less and less going for the project guys in the top 10. It's just a matter of can they buy time with the ownership, the people that sign the paychecks, and say, look, we're going to pass on this guy because it's too much of a project to expect returns immediately, and we're just going to get a safer prospect later on. I think that's kind of where this thing is heading, as it sort of corrects itself as more people miss on these trying to get the next Allen or Mahomes.
Would just like to say this, according to there's 7, not 8 of the Bill Parcells quarterback rules. I know me and Stoney are big Shedeur Sanders fans. He meets everything as long as he graduates college. Just want to throw that out
Boom.
there.
And I'll say,
throw that out there.
I would throw that one out for the Bill Parcells thing. I just don't think that matters. I mean, maybe that's like something of like, it shows character that, you know, they go through with the school and you know, do that part too or whatever. But
finish with the start.
I don't think I'd worry about that. I have no idea if most of these guys graduated college or not. I don't think it matters. But a couple things I'll add.
Just want to throw that out there. Shedeur Sanders is looking pretty good.
A couple things I will add. I think one other thing that Anthony Richardson's situation to me has underscored, I'm never taking a quarterback who misses multiple games and multiple seasons with injuries. Never again. Like Will Levis.
So what about Quinn Ewers for you?
No, I'm 100% out on Quinn Ewers because of that. And I have been for a little bit, you know, because of the injury thing. And now his play has not been great either this year. But
please come into the chat tomorrow for Blaine and Zach and tell Steve Lamb that. And make sure you tag him and tell him, because he thinks that Quinn Ewers, he's a big Texas fan. And so I need you as a Texas fan to let him know that Quinn Ewers is indeed Quinn Sewers. So I just want to throw that out there.
Yeah, no, Quinn has not had a great year. And I you know, as an aside, I'm not 100% convinced that Arch would not be the better quarterback choice for the Longhorns coming out of the bye, but we'll see. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. But I'm out on all quarterbacks with injury histories, because if you look at any of these guys that have hit, they are, Iron Men. Like, they never miss games. And that is a part of the quarterback position, being able to stay on the field long enough to get that consistency and development and the reps in and all that stuff. I think Levis missing games in both his first 2 seasons, to me, is as bigger red flag as all the turnover shit and everything else that's happening on the field. To me, that's almost disqualifying in itself for Levis to be the guy moving forward here next year and beyond. Like, I think the injury stuff is a major deal. And then the other thing I would throw in is I think there's some NIL stuff baked in here, and guys, if guys start to stick around in college more because they can get paid and they can develop, because I think that's something that, not to go back to Texas again here, but Arch Manning, I think everyone keeps talking about him in the 2026 draft. I don't think he's going to be there. I think he's going to be in the 2027 draft, because I think the Manning family values being in the program for 4 years, learning everything about the offense, being developed. That's why they went to Texas, was because of Steve Sarkisian. That's who they wanted him to learn offensive football from. He has the pro background. He's developed other pro quarterbacks. They want him to marinate in that system and come out ready to play when he gets to the NFL. And I don't think that's going to be as a 1-year starter in 2025. I think he's going to be at Texas in 2026, and he'll come out in the 2027 draft. But I think you're going to see more of that.
Nico's going to be like that too. I don't think Nico's coming out next year's.
I mean, because he's got a huge NIL deal too. I mean, it's not like
he has not looked good. He hasn't looked anywhere close to how Arch Manning has looked. And to me, it's like he's going to have to take a big jump next year, or a big jump these last few games, for people to really want Nico to come out and think he's ready, especially coming from that particular system too.
That's
the
thing that's going to hurt him.
It's tough sledding. Yeah. Like, I know everybody says wait on the 2026 quarterback draft class, but I think it's easily going to start shriveling up, and those things are not going to be able to hold true anymore. We're going to have to. I think NIL is going to make you look at the draft differently. And if you're still looking at the draft the same as you did 10 years ago, or even just 5 years ago, you're going to get hurt. You're going to get burned as a draft analyst, because I'm sorry, I love Dane Brugler, but he is a certifiable insane person to think that Garrett Nussmeier is his early quarterback one. And first off, that tweet came out, though, totally the worst time. By the way,
it was bad timing.
But he has only played 13 games. Have we not learned anything? Garrett Nussmeier is not Cam Newton. Like, he is Cajun Trubisky or Beignet Mac Jones. You can put it over there. Do not draft Garrett Nussmeier.
I am a member of the Nuss Bus, and I think he should go back to school for another year and continue to develop. He needs another year. He's still making some wild decisions. You can see the talent. Like, the talent's obvious, and his dad being a coach and everything like that at a high level. Like, you can see the processing and the anticipation throws, and like, there's a lot of good on tape. I understand what Dane is seeing there, because I see it too, and I get really excited about it. But then he makes some crazy decisions sometimes, and I'm like, dude, are you drunk? Like, what is happening? But he needs some seasoning. He needs more game experience. Because look, and he's also a guy that sat behind Jaden Daniels. So, like, a lot of times teams recently have gotten scared off of guys because, hey, if they didn't play early and if they're an older prospect, we don't want him because that means that they weren't good enough to get on the field early enough. Well, there's context to that. And if you're sitting behind Jaden Daniels for 2 years, that is pretty good context for, okay, maybe this guy's still really good and he just wasn't better than a guy who's currently lighting up the NFL as a rookie. So I'm in on Garrett Nussmeier, but I'm in on him in the 2026 class.
Yeah, like, I'm out on him, and if he comes out this year. I mean, I understand it's a weak quarterback class, and sometimes quarterbacks like to take advantage of that, especially if they're not getting paid a lot of NIL money. But if I was some LSU, whoever manages the money for these college kids, I assume they all have agents. So I'll just say, whoever his agent is needs to be getting some LSU alumni money built up, because I would not want to risk putting him in way too early, because that's what we're seeing. And that's going to slow down. And that's kind of where I'm as, like, it may hurt because this is what me and Stoney talked about the Senior Bowl. Because Jim Nagy was like, well, this fourth and, these day 3 picks, it's going to be bad. They're just all terrible. And I was like, I don't know. I think that's kind of a little bit of an overreaction, because eventually the COVID effect will wear off, because a lot of these are like COVID players. But like at the end of the day, you'll start getting an influx of these players back in, but they're going to be more seasoned, like you said. Like they're going to have more experience. They're going to have more opportunities, more big game experience, more ups and downs in their college careers. And I think we're going to start seeing better overall draft classes in every position. I feel like you'll still have your weaker position groups and all that stuff. But Stoney, I mean, I don't know if you agree, but I feel like it's a good thing for these players to stay in. And yes, I know that coaches, because this is what me and Blaine were talking about today, coaches are not developing those players. So like you get into the NFL and these coaches are like, well, crap, you're a baby. You are an infant. What am I supposed to do with you? And I think a lot of these teams dumb down their playbooks, and sometimes that works and sometimes it fails, because they have to dumb it down for the quarterback that they eventually have to build up. But the two things are, sometimes you dumb it down too much and it still doesn't help, because they're not ready for the speed of the game regardless. And you may never have the time to actually build them up. So, Stoney, do you feel like the draft classes will get a little bit better due to experience, or do you think staying in longer and still getting bad habits built in, or will college coaches eventually have to kind of change up how they coach these guys?
I don't think college coaches will change anything if they're not like regulated to, because they're not obligated to get these guys ready for the NFL. Their primary job is to win football games. And I think Malik Willis is a great example of this, with that Liberty program, where that offense was, man, I remember watching him that draft cycle and just thinking, I could probably go out there and run this offense. I might not be able to hit the throws, and I'm damn sure not navigating traffic in the open field like Malik Willis, but there were so many plays that just looked like, okay, your one read is this matchup outside the numbers. If it gets open, throw that ball. If it's not open, you just tuck the ball and run. And they won a lot of games doing that, and ultimately everybody at Liberty's happy, right? And that's the mission of the head coach. When Malik Willis gets to the NFL, what's the conversation about him heading into the draft? It's, wow, this guy is super, super raw. You are basically going to have to build this guy up. You're going to have to tear everything he knows down, build him back up. And after a couple of seasons with the Titans, with Brian Callahan this summer, we saw him develop. I think, Zach, you and I talked about it. I don't know where you were at, Mike, but I felt like there was a justifiable reason to keep 3 quarterbacks because of how well Malik Willis had progressed. And now obviously you see what he's doing with Green Bay. And it's encouraging to think that you can build these guys up, but at the same time, it's been 3 seasons for Malik, and we're just now getting to a point where he's got a more of a stable floor than he had before. I think that is probably the more likely path. I think there's probably going to be a few years of stopgap veterans for a lot of teams as the draft classes kind of catch up in quarterbacks getting into the NFL and practically learning how to play quarterback from scratch. I wouldn't be surprised at all if more teams start to try and find the guys that they think they can mold on day 2 instead of the high picks. But ultimately, I don't think the responsibility is on college coaches. And I really don't think they're going to change anything unless they absolutely have to, for whatever reason.
It's the Tennessee thing too, right? I mean, it's the whole Josh Heupel. Like Josh Heupel,
sure,
his offense does not translate to the NFL. Like, and I do think that's going to be a problem for Nico from an evaluation standpoint. Now, Nico's a little bit different from Hendon Hooker in the fact that Nico, the physical tool set jumps off the screen at you, like the arm strength, the ability to drive the ball into windows downfield. That thing is different than what Hendon Hooker had. Even if Hendon Hooker was a better college quarterback than what we've seen from Nico to this point. But the ceiling is clearly higher with Nico. But I think that's going to be the problem with his evaluation is he is going to be. It's going to be hard to project what he's going to do at the NFL level, and I do think he's going to be a guy that even if he stays for 2 or 3 or 4 years or whatever, has to have some time at the NFL level before he's ready to play. Just because it's not, those concepts aren't going to come over naturally for him. And it's not his fault. It's not Josh Heupel's fault. Josh Heupel was paid to win football games for the University of Tennessee, not produce NFL, factory line quarterbacks. So I think there is a conflict of interest there. And NFL teams are, if they want to develop those guys, they're going to have to, maybe go back to the 90s model to some degree. And I think you're going to have to figure out a way to justify that from a contract standpoint too, because this whole model of you pay your starting quarterback whatever the last starting quarterback made plus $1 million is crazy. And it's created this disparity in value where it's like, yes, the rookie quarterbacks are insanely valuable because right now the Titans are paying their whole quarterback room $6 million this year, which is a tenth of what most of the NFL are playing their starters, right? So there is a huge value disparity. And that's like 2 or 3 really good players you can pay at other positions because you've got that quarterback on a rookie contract. But that's why these teams keep playing these guys and keep saying, all right, we got to shove them out there because we got to, take advantage of the rookie contract window and all that stuff. So it kind of like the contract structures are incentivizing teams to do this as well. And at some point, they're going to
drafting and panic paying, which is the worst two combinations for teams that need a quarterback right now. Like it skews everything for the Tennessee Titans, right? Like you kind of thinking, like I'm kind of thinking right now, like, man, I kind of do hope that Will Levis really, turns into something, because that would be huge for the Tennessee Titans down the stretch. Yeah. It would show first off proof of concept that Brian Callahan can get something out of Will Levis, but it actually it rewards, the team for waiting till the second round to draft him, even though they did try to go up into the first, but like it rewarded their patience, the process that they have taken. But if he fails, you kind of like, okay, let's say he starts the rest of the way. Okay, well, that's what, 19 games of Will Levis, and you're kind of like, okay, well, I mean, Shedeur Sanders is right there. Do we really think Travis Hunter is going to help Will Levis? A lot of people think that he's a cornerback. Kevin Dyson said that I would play Travis Hunter as a cornerback. I would not play him at wide receiver. So, like, I mean, he's a great talent. But like he says, the way that he gets by on pure athleticism, and that's another issue, is just the wide receivers don't have route trees anymore. But like his instant impact is cornerback for a team, and that's fine for this team. This team probably needs an instant impact corner, and maybe he is. They decide they get him in there, and he is a wide receiver. But like at the end of the day, Shedeur Sanders, I mean, it's really hard to pass up. And I know that he has all this baggage with Deion, but Deion's going to be busy at Florida State because I'm sure Mike Norvell's about to get fired. So Deion's going to be busy with Florida State. So you'll get a few crop ups and a few podcast appearances or whatever. But like he checks off all the boxes, not just the Bill Parcells boxes, but like the boxes of what this offense is designed to do. He checks it all off and he's really good. But then you're like, you kind of get gun shy, right? Like all these this feels like the Kenny Pickett draft class, right? Like you get kind of gun shy on these quarterbacks, and then what if you miss out, or what if you draft a guy and then you're just right back in? Like it's a perilous situation for a franchise right now, especially like the Tennessee Titans. Like I've kind of like want Will Levis to do really good so we can have a definitive answer going there. Then if you do decide to draft Travis Hunter, or if he's doing good, he probably gets knocked down, you can get Luther Burden. Like that probably is better case scenario than trying to go for Shedeur Sanders. I don't know. And then if he fails next year, then he kind of knows just Will Levis, and he just has spurts. He's a too streaky of a quarterback, and then you can get someone in the next draft because you haven't overpaid Will Levis, and then he only has 1 year left on his deal. Like, I don't know. Like, please, Will Levis, I guess, at this point. Like, I can't believe I'm sitting here begging, but like, but that's the anxiety I have thinking about this quarterback situation Tennessee Titans have. And this is the anxiety that GMs feel and head coaches feel 100 times more, because the mess that was created by Trevor Lawrence, Justin Fields in that draft class is just wreaking havoc through this entire quarterback conundrum that the NFL finds itself in. Like, I feel that draft class, then you have that one, and then it went to, Kenny Pickett in them. That draft class sucked. Last year's draft class is now sucking. Like, this cascade of just suck has just brought a dark cloud over the NFL.
But that's historically kind of what happens. You have like a good draft class once every 2 or 3 years, at most with quarterbacks. Sometimes it's like once every 3 or 4 years, that you'll have 2 or 3, good, like high level.
And it seems like the one
guys
that we had last year, or this past draft, this current draft, Bo Nix and all those guys.
Maybe
that was the one draft. That was the next good draft class. That means we're waiting 4 or 5 more years.
Could be. I mean, it is rare. Like, and I got to think about it from like the same way. These guys that are really good stay in the NFL for 15 plus years now, right? So for those guys, if you had 3 or 4 hitting every year, you'd have a surplus of good quarterbacks in the league pretty quickly. Where you'd have every team would have 2 really good quarterbacks. So it's kind of limited by just like the number of seats that are available. And like everybody's competing for these guys and want to find that guy. It's just so hard to do. And that's not a satisfying answer for anybody, but it's really hard to project this stuff. And I do think Shedeur Sanders is interesting. I've waffled back and forth on Cam Ward.
He doesn't meet all the requirements of Bill Parcells yet, so we got to see some.
Cam has not. Cam hasn't checked all those boxes yet. He's played a lot of football. I know that. So I don't know, but I waffle back and forth on him. There's guys that I'm curious about, but nobody that I'm like 100% sold on. But hey, there's still a lot of college football left to be played. But I'll be interested if Levis does not show market improvement by the end of the year. I'll be interested to see how they handle the quarterback situation, because you could go draft one, but I also feel like you need to sign one. And that's kind of what ties in with this discussion. Like, I would still try to go get a Sam Darnold or a Justin Fields or one of these guys who has proven that they're at least like fringe starter level guys who could.
Because that's the interesting discussion, right? Like, if these guys are supposed to have time to develop, Mike, and supposed to have time to start in the NFL, and they're supposed to give them leeway. Well, sticking with Will Levis one more year isn't a bad thing, but you have to bring in worthy competition that is a Mason Rudolph. And like, because then you can draft a Travis Hunter, or then you can draft an Emory Jones in the 2nd round. And maybe you still draft let's say Nussmeier does come out and everybody's too scared of him. Maybe he's sitting there in the 3rd or the 4th. Then you can draft a Garrett Nussmeier, but you have to bring in veteran competition for Will Levis, even if he doesn't show market improvement, because then maybe it is just the reps. Maybe it is just another offseason under the same scheme. Who knows? But you can't just go in with just Will Levis and Mason Rudolph or a Mason Rudolph level quarterback at this point. Do you have any positivity to bring us out of this funk, Stoney?
No, absolutely not. The exact opposite, actually. I am terrified of this upcoming offseason and what happens for this franchise if Will Levis is not the guy and they don't win the Shedeur Sanders sweepstakes. I don't know. I genuinely don't know what the what the solution is at quarterback at that point, because I feel like Sam Darnold's paying his way into a big contract somewhere. I don't know. I mean, maybe you can go after him and really pursue him. I think there are some intriguing names. Justin Fields, we talked about. I wonder if there's any juice left to squeeze from a Drew Lock. Let's get a health check on Jimmy G. He's out there.
No Drew Lock here. No, we're not doing Drew Lock.
Oh,
you will not red pill me into Drew Lock.
I'm not trying to red pill anybody on Drew Lock tonight. I'm highlighting, okay? I'm highlighting how dire the situation is if Will Levis doesn't turn this thing around and the Titans don't get Shedeur Sanders, because I don't like Cam Ward really. Quinn Ewers is a disaster waiting to happen. Carson Beck has like killed his draft stock. I'm not that high on Garrett Nussmeier. I'm withholding final judgment because I've only watched the South Carolina game, and it was not very, very good in my opinion. So I haven't started Drew Aller, so maybe there's something there.
I need to
I know
watch him.
some people are coming around on him a little bit, but man, I just don't I don't see the depth in the draft or in free agency this upcoming cycle. And man, if they don't get it right, I think that's a quick path towards the Titans blowing this thing all up again, and we're just back in purgatory again. So is that good? Does that classify as positivity? Do we feel
I'll
better?
say this: it's looking pretty slim that Drew Aller is going to hit the majority of these Bill Parcells things. So we'll throw that out there. Yeah, it's not looking good on his end, but we'll revisit that later.
I'm going to
I've got some positivity.
Oh, let's hear it.
There's only 10 games left this season.
I like it. I like it. Well, that will do it for us. It has been a eventful and I think a very thoughtful discussion on the quarterback situations and all that kind of stuff. There's just no one size fits all when it comes to these quarterbacks and what the future may hold, on how to evaluate them or anything like that. I think it will be very interesting to see how the NFL starts handling the rookie quarterbacks, to see if they've learned from these past mistakes, because everything is kind of cyclical in the NFL. Defenses are back. Defenses are, going through a renaissance right now across the league. Maybe that means that not only is old school defense back, but old school handling the quarterbacks is back. So it'll be real interesting to see, because you could still build around, still spend money with your rookie quarterback on a rookie contract while he's riding the bench. Like, you could still build. I mean, it doesn't really prevent you. You just have to spend a little bit extra money, maybe on a Justin Fields or anybody not named Drew Lock in this upcoming.
What about Jarrett Stidham?
Well, Jarrett, I could be talked into a little bit as a bridge. He's better than Drew Lock. He's better than Drew Lock. He won some games for the Raiders.
We're down bad.
Or was it the Broncos? I can't remember. But
I thought you said Jared Stillman for a second.
Yeah, no.
Why not? Give him a shot.
But that will do it for us here on Football and Other F Words on 104.5 The Zone. Thanks for everybody that joined us in the chat and stuck with us through tonight. Hope everybody has a safe Halloween. Mike Herndon at Mike Herndon NFL, PK.com is where you can read his stuff, his obituaries that he writes about the Tennessee Titans every week. And then all the good poetry and greeting card, feel good stuff you can get over at stackinginbox.com, written by Stoney Keeley at Stoney Keeley on Twitter. And of course, you can follow me at the Zach Lyons, and you watch Blaine and Zach on Cover 2 Mondays through Friday, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. Central Standard Time. But for everybody here, for all the Titans fans out there, this has been Football and Other F Words, and you have just been effed.